Okay, tell you a little bit call it animal rescue history here. I think it was 2001 I got my first dog as an adult, not as a kid. I was in my 30s. I got my first dog, and I went to the pound, SPCA, and got this dog. Was actually bringing it to my mom's house. She had a dog who was kind of alone all the time. And I said, well, I got my cattle out. That's actually the place I'm standing at right now. My cattle were out here. My mom was still living here, and she had this dog out in the back. It actually was my dad's dog. And she said, gee, I wish we could get another dog to spend time with our existing dog. I said, well, I'll go find a cattle dog or something like that. Typical thing people do. They got a lonely dog and they want to put another dog with it. Big mistake. So I went to the pound, went to the SPCA, and I found this little cow dog. She looked like she was half coyote, but cute little thing. Different than any other dog I've ever had. We just lost her maybe about a month and a half ago, and here it's like 2014. And she'd had a cancer thing she was dealing with. But she was different. She was a good starting dog. She was just aces. I mean, just a sweetheart of a dog, obedient, everything you wanted in a dog. But it was a bad start dog because she was so easy and didn't really require much training. And you think every dog comes after is going to be just like it, and that's not the case. But anyhow, back in, I think it was 2001, I started with the dogs. I lived in a tract home and moved in with a girlfriend of mine. We got moved out of my house, moved into her house, and she had a couple. I had picked up two other dogs at a local feed store that I go to. There'd always be some free dogs out front. They had the cutest little pit bull labs, and I remember bringing them home. I said she'd already got one dog. What's wrong with a couple more? Girlfriend had two dogs, so here we had 5 dogs in a pretty good sized backyard tract home. And so I'd already been accustomed to the numbers. 5 dogs didn't really freak me out. I was cool with that, and I enjoyed it. I got out of that relationship. Ended up moving out to where my cattle are at for a time. Bought another house, moved into it. Somewhere along the line, I picked up another cattle dog. That put me at 1, 2, 3. That was 4 dogs. And bought another place that had a lot of acreage, way off the street, so it's pretty good. And where I work, it's typically people drop dogs off, or they did in the past. We get a lot of stray dogs. And usually they're pretty rough. You get a lot of not the best pit bulls or a lot of cow dogs, that kind of thing. And the pound usually comes out and gets them. And occasionally you get a dog that you kind of like, so you end up taking them home. And so I got 2 or 3 dogs that way. I got some dogs from family members that could no longer take care of them. Yeah, this was over several years. I did purchase one dog because I just wanted one, and that was a husky, the Siberian Husky, Malamute. And that's kind of the story of himself. I still have the dog. He's a beautiful dog. And he's Norman on one of my other videos. So I ended up, I've got the dogs I started with, a couple that I collected from work, another one I bought, and then matter of fact, one that just showed up, and we still have it today. My mother has that dog. So I ended up, I've got at this point, this has got to be like 2006, I had 6 or 8 dogs on this place, and I took good care of them. They all had their own pens, had a big dog yard. They had great shelters. In the wintertime, they got, had a warm place for the winter inside of a heated area. It was a good setup. But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed doing it. It was not as costly as it is now, but the way I did it was, it didn't cost me a bundle, but it was something I chose to do. I didn't mind. I wasn't going out and seeking dogs to rescue. It's just something you stumble across. And that's kind of a trap you could fall into. That's where I know people that actually go out and get rescue dogs, bring them into their home. Maybe they adopt them out or keep them, whatever. I never had that problem. Dogs were everywhere. I couldn't make a turn without stumbling across some dog. And so here it is now. We've got 8, 9 dogs. I had some dogs where I might have been driving down the road. You see some half dead thing on the side of the road that's still alive, emaciated, should have died. I had a little miniature schnauzer that I found like that. How this thing was alive was beyond me. I got her, took her to the vet, cleaned her up. She lived another 3 or 4 years. But typically it was like this for me. I stumbled across these animals and took them in. And here, we'll go up to now. There's like, I think right up until, I might have had close to, I think at one time I had 15 or 16 dogs. All well cared for, you know. And I said it wasn't cheap, but I chose to do it, so it wasn't a big deal. So anyway, but the reason I bring this up because I've had over a dozen years now of experience with these types of dogs, rescue dogs in that situation. So when I speak on it, I'll speak on what I know, and I just want to share that in case you're someone that might be getting in the same boat. There's pros and cons to this. I moved out of the other house I had. It was a decent sized lot, about 3.5 acres. It was well off the street. The neighbors knew what I was doing. They didn't care too much. It wasn't that big a deal. But I didn't have a lot of drive-by traffic that could see me and my dogs out there. And this is something you have to consider. If you're thinking of having a dog yard or a kennel or something like that, and you're gonna have, if someone can see that you have more than 2 or 3 dogs, it's going to become an issue. So I moved out of that place. I rented out, and it was easier for me to come out here where my cattle are. And it's 18 acres out here. And I set up a dog yard up by the house, up by the road. And it's probably over an acre, acre and a half in size. And I've had as many as probably 12 or 13 dogs in there. There's some shelters set up. Each dog has his own little dog house, plenty of shade. But I had them on staked. They're all staked on chains. Had like 18 feet of chain. And they're not like that all the time. When I'm up there, it's just when I'm away at work or if I'm late at night, the dogs are locked up. Keep them secure from getting out and harassing the cattle. But throughout the day when I'm here, I'd have the dogs off the chains, off the leads. So they had plenty of, and most of my dogs are old, and I think they're thriving for a whole lot of exercise, but they have plenty of freedom to move about. Problem I found with it is being so close to the road is people would drive by and see your dogs out there on chains. And that bugs a lot of people. And I get that, I understand that. Because they drive by and it takes them 5 seconds to drive by your place and see your dogs on chains. And they're going to make a decision that for 24 hours in a day, that's exactly what those dogs are experiencing. They're making that decision in a 5-second drive-by. Now maybe they drive back home on the way from work and they see the dogs are still chained there. Now they have a 10-second experience which basically allows them to judge your operation for 24 hours. They weren't around to see that the dogs were out all morning. They weren't around, I work nights, that most of the night the dogs were loose. They just know that those dogs are chained up all day, all night. And so that brought me into some trouble later on. And so in my personal experience, if I could have done it differently, I would have moved the dogs further back out in the property, and just so you don't have people drive by judging you. And I've had people, complete strangers, come up to me and say some of the stupidest things, and I enjoy the fact that people are showing some kind of mercy towards anything, an animal, a tree, hey, even their fellow human being. That's great, but I see that people are concerned. But instead of coming up and just asking a few questions, come out and make some wild accusations. I had a group came by here on bicycles. They come by every Saturday. And this one lady slowed down just enough to tell me that I was how she's discussed it at puppy mills. She looked at my dogs out there in that yard and surmised that this was a puppy mill. There's not an intact animal on the place. Okay, every dog out there's been fixed. And there would be no sign of, and they were mixed breed dogs, they're just mutts. But how she came with the idea that this was some sort of a puppy mill, really ticked me off. But here's a person who probably drives by on her bike, takes her 20 seconds every Saturday, and she'd pretty much decided that I was, Satan himself and abusing these dogs. But that was the presentation. That's basically what I presented in my little dog operation. So if you're going to get into something like that, you really have to look at what the outside world thinks when they see you. If you have a sign out front that says animal rescue, animal refuge, or no sign at all, you just have a lot of dogs. Nowadays, here it is 2014, you got people that watch Animal Planet all day and watch about these animal abusers. You're going to get thrown into that lot unless you have a really clean, smooth operation, which is tough to do with a lot of dogs because they shred everything. So, first thing, when I'm bringing this up, I'll point something out is one, I never went out to get dogs. Dogs just ended up in front of me. You have to make a decision at that time, you're going to take this dog in or not. I have no problem with that. And anything you do, once you look like someone with a lot of dogs, you get more than 3 dogs on your property, suddenly you're a hoarder, okay? And you are going to be suspect. So you have to prepare that whatever your codes and whatever is legal in your area, you better have all that stuff taken care of. I did have someone on 2 separate occasions where they called the SPCA out to investigate me. They came out. I had some dogs that weren't, none of my dogs were licensed. I thought I was in the county. It didn't think it mattered. So I had to get all those dogs licensed. The guy was very respectful. The guy knew how to approach the property. This guy was a pro. And the guy from the SPCA comes out and says, hey, you know, we got a call. We need to investigate you. And I asked him, I said, okay, you look at my operation here. It's, you know, it's a mess. Dogs are tearing things up, and I don't necessarily get to clean it all up right away. But they had everything they needed. I said, am I a hoarder? And he said, no, your dogs are spoiled rotten. They're too fat to be, you know, for you to be a hoarder. You're taking care of them. I showed him vet bills and stuff like that. And but he said, he goes, you got to understand, there are people that want to care for something, that want to be active in, you know, bringing good or bringing change or whatever. And they're sitting in front of that television all day watching Animal Planet. And I'm not picking on Animal Planet, but these people get charged up like that. And when they drive, he told me this, they drive around, they see something like that, they want to get their 2 cents in. They want to make some kind of change because they think they're seeing a wrong. And he told me at that point, he says, if I were you, move the dogs to the back of your property or make it so no one can see that you have these dogs in here, because this is standard now. You got people that are going to, you know, point the finger at you, get us to come out. And he said, outside of the way I had the dogs chained, I needed to put them on trolley systems, which we switched everybody over to a trolley system, which was actually less space for the dog to move around than I originally had set. But you cannot have a dog staked. So we made some adjustments. I wanted them to have at least the same amount of space they had before when they were staked. So we made adjustments for that. So it all worked out. And it's all legal. Everything I have now is illegal as far as the dog is concerned. But that is something you have to consider. I've just covered 2 things there. You know, how I ended up with my dogs. And I've been doing this for over a dozen years. And you will be, people are watching you, okay? And you have to plan for that. You don't want to, you know, if you had something going on wrong or whatever the case is, something that wasn't quite right, someone's going to come out and make you fix it. And if you can't, you're going to have to deal with that. So you really got to find out what your local authorities want you to do in this kind of thing. And I'm going to turn this into another video.